their trade, impatient customers breathing down a server's neck, high-pressure situations, many with open kitchens, all trying to make a living. Mistakes will happen. And then there is the menu change. Many restaurants change their menu frequently to add to the customer experience. They have to offer a variety to keep it fresh and hopefully in season too. But every change brings another problem, another allergy list, and another place for an error to occur. Not as easy as one first thought. I will indeed.
2022 data published the FSA shows that when dealing with the risk of food allergies, smaller manufacturers will focus on the physical separation and secure storage of ingredients. In comparison, medium-sized manufacturers will take further steps such as cleaning between production runs and managing the packaging, labels and transport of products. Does my honourable friend agree that businesses of all sizes should have access to personalised guidance on how they can improve their allergy awareness and risk assessment?
Fletcher.
For a contribution again, and I will be coming on to that, and I do believe the first petition that asks for a czar will be able to bring all these concerns together, which would obviously help the industry immensely. There are companies out there such as Control Catering that want to work with the Food Standard Agency and the industry to create a single source of truth. They want to work with manufacturers so that all data is seamlessly passed to the end user and obviously us, the customer, the diner. With 50,000 products across a huge supply chain, supplying so many different outlets to 60 million plus people across this land, the petitioners believe this is a sensible idea. The British Institute of Innkeeping and Hospitality Allergen Support UK feel it is sensible too. But apparently the FSA are slow in their response when contacted about this. The industry believes that unless we have a joined-up approach, we could end up putting legislation forward that has the best intentions but turns out to be completely unworkable. I know there is much more that the petitioners would have me say, but I must move on in the hope that other MPs will have their thoughts on the complexity of this issue. The second part of Owen's Law is that all servers start a discussion with customers about allergies so that customers do not have to ask. Now, my own experience is that this is happening anyway. However, I am fortunate to answer no, so I am unsure how deep this conversation goes if the answer is yes. Stakeholders feel there is training required here for all servers. But I also understand that this industry suffers from a high turnover in staff, and so again, this is not an easy task. I will, yes.
Debate for us this afternoon. And just on that particular point, would you agree with me that even though there's a high turnover of staff very often in the hospitality trade, perhaps technology can help us in this regard? And you mentioned earlier about the electronic form and QR codes, and perhaps that's something that might assist even those staff members who might only work in a restaurant for a couple of months at a time to be able to quickly check when asked what ingredients are actually in the food that they're serving.
I remember for his comment, and he's right. And I think as we move forward with the digital age, just options on menus as we discuss, as the server discusses with us, the diners, things like that will be able to be put in place. But maybe the conversation should always be instigated. But if the answer is yes, the server should be assisted by a person in a higher authority or even the chef if the server is not adequately trained. Again, this may be difficult to implement, but a conversation must take place with an outcome that protects anyone who suffers with allergies. Before I move on from this, though, I do believe there is a responsibility on people who suffer from allergies to make it known. They must play their part. I know many are young, but I am a firm believer in personal responsibility, and we must give the catering industry a chance. Help them to help us. Help if a system is not quite working as it should. And all of us who are fortunate enough not to suffer should support those that do with being patient and showing a caring attitude when ordering our food together with guests. maybe even ordering what they order if it is our child who suffers. That would help our children and the restaurateur and show some skin in the game too. If we want change, we should be prepared to bear a little cost ourselves, make ourselves a little uncomfortable for the cause. The state cannot and should not be the answer to everything. We all should play our part. Finally, Owen's Law asks we maintain a list of all people who have died from anaphylaxis shock. This would not necessarily be for the public domain, or even name where the tragedy occurred, but recorded so that the government and all stakeholders are aware of the size of this problem and aid how we can work on prevention as well as a cure. Professor Adam Fox believes that there should also be a list of near misses. Near misses are recorded in the construction industry. They should be recorded here too. If we know the size of the problem, it may focus our attention on why there is a problem. Why are 40% of the population suffering with some kind of allergy? To me, this is the real question. We can now see why the petitioners believe the introduction of a ZAR could help with the aim of the second petition of instigating Owen's Law. They believe by doing nothing, we will see more tragedies. And if the industry simply states all our food may contain certain ingredients, people with hypersensitivity will stay away. Some stakeholders believe if we move too quickly with poor regulation, we will damage the industry and no doubt close businesses. So do we do nothing? Well, the petitioners and the industry at large agree there should be a change. Appointing a ZAR that could lead on solutions may just do that. Help bring forward legislation or ideas that not only save lives, but also save an industry that is battling on many fronts to simply stay afloat. I look forward to listening to what colleagues have to say and the Minister. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered E-petitions 585304 and 589716 relating to food labelling and support for people with allergies. John Crudders.
Indeed, Sir Graham. What we're talking about today matters a great deal to a great many people. Millions across the country suffer from some allergic condition. It's estimated that 44% of adults and 50% of children in the UK have one or more allergic disorders. Whilst allergies have increased on a global scale over the last 60 years in terms of prevalence, severity and complexity, the UK rates are amongst the highest in the world. There is a modern-day epidemic in allergy. Therefore, I very much welcome both petitions this afternoon to appoint an allergy jar as a champion for people living with allergies and in support of Owen's Law, and to change the law around allergy labelling in UK restaurants. And I congratulate the organisers because literally tens of thousands of people are mobilising and demanding change, both in terms of public health, but also corporate responsibility in terms of labelling policy. Why do we need an allergy czar? Well, no single person has overall responsibility for the well-being of allergy sufferers in either the Department of Health and Social Care, NHS England, or literally anywhere else in government. There's no clear lines of accountability in relationship to overall NHS provision of allergy care. An allergy czar would act as a champion for people living with allergies. The czar, as the national lead, would ensure adults and children with allergies receive appropriate support to prevent avoidable death and ill health. The lack of a national lead has been raised time and time again by coroners at the inquests of those who tragically died following severe allergic reactions. The need for an allergy czar is supported throughout the National Allergy Strategy Group and across the allergy community. Of course.
He's an expert in this subject, so I pose this question to him. Given the length of time this has been called for, i.e. a national lead and allergy czar, does he understand why the government is resistant to doing this?
John Crudders.
Well, I'm going to come on and talk to that because there's been 20 years of reports that all agree about a common platform for policy changes. There's a sort of unanimity across the community, and it is bewildering that over the last 20 years, governments haven't responded in a proactive way, even though over the last 18 months there has been a few changes, which I'll come to later on. The need for an allergy czar, as I say, is supported by the National Allergy Support Strategy Group. And in addition to an allergy czar, the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation and the NASG are asking the government to better support people with allergies through, firstly, an expert advisory group for allergy, to actively support the growth and delivery of high-quality, comprehensive and geographically diverse allergy provision. A national allergy action plan, I'll just stop on there, yeah.
A lack of societal awareness around food allergies is dangerous. For example, while 600,000 people in the UK have celiac disease, there is the misconception that people choose to eat gluten-free food for its health and cosmetic benefits. Does the honourable member agree that more needs to be done to ensure that the UK public is aware of the definition and dangers of different food allergies?
I agree, and I would suggest that that's part of a lack of an overall strategy and key responsibilities at national level to make people aware about some of these differences and the public health needs across all of our communities in every constituency that we represent here in Parliament. And the second part of the proposal is a national allergy action plan joining up GP and hospital allergy services, increasing the number of specialist allergy clinics, training more specialist allergy doctors and consultants, and mandatory training in allergies for all GPs. Owen Carey's family want to see a change in the law to compel restaurants to state the allergens in their dishes, specifically on the face of main menus. That would build on Natasha's law, which dealt with the ingredients and allergy listings on pre-packaged takeaway foods. Natasha's law left an uneven situation where people buying pre-packaged foods have more protection than those eating in restaurants, and that's what the family are keen to sort out. The family are also campaigning for better training for waiting staff, more thorough and certified allergy and first aid training, and as we've heard, proper recording of and a national register for anaphylaxis deaths. These are all very sensible suggestions, it seems to me. Businesses are also responding. In March 2023, the bosses of 11 leading UK businesses, including Tesco's and Sainsbury's, called on clearer rules on food labelling following recent tragic and preventable deaths. In terms of the general context, the figures speak for themselves. 1/3 of the population, or 20 million people in the UK, are living with an allergic condition. 5 million have severe conditions enough to require specialist care. Fatal and near-fatal reactions have increasing over recent years. There has been a 615% increase in hospital admissions relating to allergic disease during the last 20 years. Over 200,000 people require the prescription of emergency adrenaline use to the severity of their allergic condition. And each year, 43,000 new births each year, new births add 43,000 cases of child allergy to the population in need. So the figures are quite extraordinary. And what is so frustrating, touching on what my colleague raised a few minutes ago, is that over the past 2 decades, a series of reports have consistently demonstrated the prevalence of allergic diseases, the patient needs, and the lack of UK service provision. The list includes 2 Royal College of Physicians reports in 2003 and 2010 on allergy, the unmet need. We've had a 2004 Commons Health Select Committee report on the provision of allergy services, as well as a 2007 House of Lords Science and Technology Committee report on allergy. And in autumn 2021, the All-Party Group on Allergy and the National Allergy Strategy Group published Meeting the Challenges of the National Allergy Crisis. All these reports have consistently highlighted how allergy remains poorly managed across the NHS due to a lack of training and expertise. All have recommended significant improvement in specialist services, as well as improved knowledge and awareness in primary care. They've all talked about a national allergy action plan and the need for a national lead person responsible for allergy services, an allergy czar. Yet, in truth, very little has happened in 20 years, and change is long overdue. And beyond the actual statistics, we're talking about a growing number of people living with allergic disease. Their condition can have significant and negative impacts on their lives and that of their families. It's a frightening, restrictive to live with a condition which can cause severe life-threatening reactions at any time. Just briefly, the reports I mentioned spanning 20 years have all agreed on 4 key recommendations for change. A national plan for allergy, making allergy a priority, and invest in a national plan led by a designated department head a national ZAR, specialist care, expand the specialist workforce as a priority, in primary care, ensure all GPs and healthcare professionals have knowledge of allergic diseases, and in terms of commissioning, ensure local commissioners understand the allergy needs of their population. Now, as I mentioned, I do want to acknowledge some progress over the last year. The previous Minister for Care and Mental Health, the member for Chichester, demonstrated some real commitments in this area, and since 2021 we've established a work programme and an ongoing dialogue between civil servants and representatives from the NASG to support the development of a national plan. I hope this work continues. It should be the right of every sufferer to receive a quality standard of care, and every allergy sufferer should be confident about the food that they consume in restaurants, like the arrangements that successfully operate in other countries, such as the Irish Republic. As mentioned, in December 2022, the Food Standards Agency executive said that due to the need to respond to the deadline imposed by the EU retained law, they had to delay their planned work on Owen's Law. Supporting the petition this afternoon will hopefully put pressure on DEFRA to force the FSA to prioritise their work on Owen's Law before another person dies unnecessarily. So I want to just congratulate all the organisers of petitions this afternoon, of both petitions, and urge the government to respond favourably to them, because literally lives depend on it. Government action is important, and I hope the government can back both petitions this afternoon. Thank you, Sir Graham.
Steve Bryan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brady. Of you to call me so early. I was really keen to make a contribution to today's important debate, which has been ably laid out by my honourable friend for Don Valley, and congratulations to the many people who've signed the petition. It's 13,000, as he said, and I think the second highest number of people who've signed it live in the Winchester constituency, Mr. Brady, which I'll explain why. So it's a subject that I'm interested in, not only as I chair the Health and Social Care Select Committee in the House of Commons. I'm a former public health minister and have sat in the seat where the minister is today many times. But I'm also the constituency MP of Emma, whose lovely brother Owen, and Emma's here today, gives his name to part of today's debate, and obviously one of the petitions and the Owen's Law campaign, of course. And the House will wish to note that I met up with Emma on Friday in Winchester, and heard a bit about her little brother, the tragic circumstances in which he lost his life, and the brilliant campaign, I have to say, that her and the family have put together in his memory. They've hot-footed it from Manchester, where they were on the BBC Breakfast sofa this morning. So it's really great to have them here in the gallery today. Now, the Health Committee recently launched a major new inquiry, as I've said a number of times in this chamber, into prevention of ill health. It's a subject that I'm passionate about. It's one of my top priorities as chair. Obviously, prevention covers a huge range of topics, and that's one of the reasons why we've decided to theme our inquiry around 10 key work streams, which we'll be exploring over the remainder of this year and probably into next as well. A very high number of the submissions that we received to our initial call for evidence were related to food. And although there are perhaps more obvious topics that spring to mind when talking about food and prevention, such as the whole obesity agenda, for instance, I think it's really important that we don't lose sight of just how crucial preventative work is when it comes to supporting people with food allergies and intolerances. So today's debate, Mr. Brady, on these two E-petitions, I think perfectly illustrates this point. In the case of Owen, whose sad death at the age of just 18 gave rise to the campaign for Owen's Law, and Natasha, who we've heard about as well, these were simply avoidable deaths. They really could have been prevented if there had been better information available about allergens. And I agree with the honourable gentleman from Dagenham about levelling that playing field. I think he put that very well. So to avoid other families suffering the same awful loss that Owen's family and Natasha's family have experienced, it is absolutely essential that the government looks at what more can be done to pull together all of this work that's been done over many years to ensure that people with allergies have the information they need to make informed decisions about what they can and cannot eat. I was really encouraged to see in the government's response to the petition about Owen's Law that the Food Standards Agency met with the Carey family to discuss their proposals, and the agency committed to working with the department to consider how to improve the provision of information to people with food hypersensitivity. But that response was issued back in 2021. So I hope today the Minister can provide us with an update on how that work is progressing. Alongside improving the provision of information about allergens, it's really important, as we've heard, that research continues into food allergies. So there is an improved understanding of how to prevent complications relating to those allergies in the future. Ministers should look to the work proposed by Professor Adam Fox at the British Society for Allergy and Clinical Immunology in this regard. Again, I was encouraged to see in the response to the second petition that the government highlighted the more than £2 million that was allocated by the National Institute for Health Research into food allergies over the preceding 5 years. Again, though, that response dates from 2021, so I hope we can have an update today. I understand the Food Standards Agency will discuss these changes proposed under Owen's Law at their June board meeting, which is very good news. Will the Minister ensure that the strength of feeling in the House today is fed into them ahead of that meeting? Specifically, I think specifics are important here, we're talking about Regulation 5 of the Food Information Regulations dated 2014. They simply oblige restaurants to provide allergen information accurately, quotes, by any means, which could literally mean anything, just a passing verbal reference. In short, what Owen's Law campaigns for is to change those words by any means to writing that vital information on the menu. And I think that's critically important for the reasons that we've discussed. But, you know, many people don't want to discuss their allergies and their personal health circumstances when they're going for a birthday meal. And that's not unreasonable. So that's the specific, Mr. Brady. I trust the Minister will agree with me that it's essential that we make progress in this area and do so fast. The member for Dagenham said about all the work that's gone on over a decade or more in this respect. The bottom line, Minister, is that the music stops when you're in that chair. And I've been in that chair, and it's a wonderful, wonderful job. It's the best job in government. It's the great opportunity, and the opportunity is yours at this moment. So grab it. There's already an Owen's Law architecture in place in the Republic of Ireland, as we've heard. So could the Minister promise the House that he will look at their example and learn what we can from it? Mr. Brady, we need to see changes in the law. We need to see change in the regulations, change in the guidance and industry practice and research into allergies. I won't repeat every ask of the campaign because my honourable friend has done that in opening the debate. But we intend to keep working until we get progress on this. And I promise that as the Chair of the Health Select Committee, I will be putting my weight behind this and we will be looking at this on the Select Committee. Now, Owen had a range of allergies, and although just 18, he'd become very well versed in managing them, and that got to 18 in managing them well. School lunches, trips, holidays. I've heard that they had to work so hard to manage them. Owen didn't have to die, Mr. Brady, but he did because he went out for a meal to celebrate his 18th birthday. And I asked his big sister on Friday what she thinks Owen will be doing today. He'd be 23 years old. And Emma said she thought he'd be somewhere in Wales, the family's spiritual home, I understand, probably on the Gower beaches, where his brother Daniel, who's also here today, taught him to surf. He was due to go to Swansea University, I understand, and Emma thinks he'd most definitely be working in something really clever, probably tech and computing, living a very outdoor life to the full, and playing that guitar that he loves so much. He can't do that, Mr. Brady. He can't do any of that now, and that's a tragedy. But we can do something to ensure that his death wasn't in vain, and Natasha's, and to ensure others don't end up in the same position. There's a saying that I like to refer to often in this place, and I used to have it on my desk when I had the minister's job, is that for a moment like this, and you can complete the sentence with anything you like, for a moment like this, we are in Parliament. Please, let's seize the opportunity. Thank you.
Sarah Green.
Sir Graham. Thank you, Sir Graham. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for John Valley for opening this debate and all those who signed both petitions. I'd like to start by expressing my support for the appointment of an allergy czar to act as a champion for allergy sufferers. Last year, I was contacted by a then 8-year-old constituent who shared with me a harrowing experience she had following an allergic reaction. This particular constituent had been baking with her grandparents and ended up consuming what doctors suspect may have been trace amounts of either pistachio or cashew nuts. The reaction led to her being rushed to hospital in an ambulance, terrified, and in her own words, thinking she might die. Thankfully, my constituent was able to receive treatment in time, but her parents have told me how they've had to become food manufacturing detectives to keep their daughter safe. They routinely contact food companies directly to understand the company's cross-contamination policies, which then allows them to make informed decisions on what food to give their daughter. Surely in today's Britain, parents shouldn't have to play detective in order to keep their children safe. While there exists a legal requirement to label products that contain any of the 14 most common allergens, such a requirement remains sadly lacking when it comes to precautionary labelling on the risks of cross-contamination. This means there remains a significant variation in whether and how food companies provide this information. Some companies that clean machinery between manufacturing different food products decide not to include precautionary labelling at all, despite the risk of cross-contamination from trace amounts of allergens. Where companies do provide such information, the way in which it is shared can vary drastically, including both the location of the labels on the packaging as well as the phraseology used. And it's this lack of consistency which can lead to confusion, as the Food Standards Agency identified in their report published last summer. Most importantly, it can lead to sufferers or their parents missing critical information that can help them decide whether a particular food is safe or not. My constituents have also raised with me the fact that where there are warnings about nuts in particular, they are almost always generic, with statements such as, "This product may contain nuts." In some cases where sufferers are allergic to some types of nuts but not others, this lack of detail means large amounts of food products that otherwise might be suitable for them are automatically ruled out. As the Food Standards Agency report makes clear, this much-needed change is supported by industry, and I quote, "Food businesses want a standardised approach with clear requirements that provide certainty and a level playing field, giving confidence that their risk assessments protect consumers." I therefore urge the Government to appoint an allergy czar and to take action on precautionary labelling to ensure that allergy sufferers are able to make those informed decisions about what they eat and to reduce the risk of them exposing themselves to potentially deadly allergens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. And it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'd also like to congratulate my colleague, the Honourable Member for Don Valley, for leading on this debate. Paul Carey, Owen's dad, is my constituent. His son was lost when he ate a burger that had been soaked in buttermilk, as we've already been told. But, Minister, I will be repeating what you've heard already so that it hits home. Something that he was highly allergic to. Owen knew about his allergies, and he explained them to the server, who did not know that the burgers had been soaked in buttermilk. Owen died at the London Eye, just across from this building. That's why I think it's particularly brave for my constituent and his family to come here today, and I thank them for this and for their tireless campaigning so that they can stop another parent going through what they have gone through. Many restaurants already have allergy information on their menus, including small outlets in my constituency. And I thank them for this and call on other places to do this on their menus now, before any change in law. It could quite simply save a customer's life. A customer which could come back time and time again because they feel confident in the information provided without having to ask for it and rely on one server that may not have the full information. This works already. The Republic of Ireland implemented a change in their law in 2014, And I understand the Food Standards Agency has already done a fact-finding mission to better understand how this law works in practice, and are doing a workshop next month to go through their findings. This would not need to be a big change in legislation, Minister. Food businesses already need to make available allergy information. Making it go on the face of a menu would stop those with allergies having to ask for it. So, Minister, I call on you and the government to make this a priority and make this change to existing law now. I'm sure the whole House would back this minor change with very little cost to the public purse. I also ask the government to look at how training service of staff can be improved so that they can ask customers about allergies, and that their training can be improved so they know about allergens and what to do if someone has an allergic reaction. I have relations and I have members of staff who have allergies in one way or another. And Minister, it's time that we started to take some action now. So I'm looking at you in your reply to confirm that you will tell us when your department plans to bring in Owen's Law and implement it. Thank you very much, Mr. Brady.
Andy Salt.
Thank you very much, Sir Graham. It's a pleasure to be here under your chairmanship today. Well, I think it's a very important debate because, in echoing what the Chair of the Health Select Committee and others have said, for relatively small changes to the way the NHS is organised and to legislation, a dramatic change can be made, a significant improvement in the lives of millions and saving the lives of a significant number. So I hope we are going to hear something positive from the Minister on that. And could I also thank the Honourable Gentleman who opened the debate, particularly for the comments which he made about Natasha Ednan-Laperouse and her family, and the sensitive and compassionate way in which he dealt with that particular tragic death. Natasha and the family are my constituents, and we've heard that Natasha died from eating a pret-a-manger sandwich which was inadequately labelled at the age of just 15 years old. And I will never, it will stay with me for the rest of my life, the afternoon I spent with Nadim, Natasha's father, as he described his experience from a happy holiday, going out, getting ready, excitement, getting ready to fly, taking the normal precautions she did as someone who knew about her allergies, in this case to sesame, and ended with her awful death. I don't want to dwell on that. I'm very pleased to see Tanya, Natasha's mother, here today. I have obviously huge sympathy and compassion for the family, but I've also got huge admiration for them and for everything that they have done in commemorating Natasha's life, but in going far beyond what many people could do, have done, in ensuring that the lives of others have been improved. Not only setting up the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation, which we've heard about, but in pioneering Natasha's Law that came into effect in 2021, which requires food businesses to include full ingredient labelling on pre-packed for direct sale foods. And that filled an important gap in the food legislation and food safety. And of course, Owen's Law would do exactly the same in another respect. And I'm his family here today, and I praise them also for having the courage and pursuing this matter. And I hope that because of the efforts those families have made, we will see a positive response, because although we have made those steps forward, and they're important steps forward, there is still a lot of work to do. Hence these petitions, and hence the debate, not only today but last week in this chamber. The petitions received a very high number of signatures, and some of the highest were from my constituents, and I think that shows how a case like Natasha's can have a profound impact on not just the family but the whole community. I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, the member for Dagenham and Rainham, for securing last week's debate, marking Allergy Awareness Week, and also his speech today. And I looked carefully at the Minister's reply, and I'll come back to some more detail in a moment, from that debate last Thursday. And unfortunately, I heard nothing about steps towards appointing an allergy czar in that response, something that the allergy community are telling us is needed to keep people safe and research moving forward. As we've heard in both debates, allergies in the UK are on the rise. Around 1 in 3 people have an allergy-related disorder, and over the last 20 years there's been a more than 600% increase in hospital admissions due to allergic diseases. But it's not just the numbers of allergy sufferers, it's also the severity of the symptoms which are escalating. Over 200,000 people in the UK are requiring emergency adrenaline on prescription to manage their allergy. The very real and ever-present risk of death from an allergic reaction is an ongoing trauma to families and parents of young children who have an allergy condition. As we've heard, around 50% of our child population now live with an allergic condition. Many of our schools have rightly become nut-free zones due to the numbers of children who would be at risk if someone were to bring in a nut-based food in their lunchbox. Children go to school with medication bags, including EpiPens and adrenaline, in case the worst happens. We shouldn't underestimate the distress and anxiety this can cause a child. They must learn from a very early age the consequences that can come from eating the wrong things. The weight of this on a child is really quite unfathomable, and yet we do not have anybody within the Department of Health and Social Care or NHS England who is responsible for a strategy to tackle allergies. We know this is a growing problem and research is desperately needed, but to ensure that allergic conditions get the focus they need, there has to be someone appointed to champion the issue. Given the current state of the NHS, we all understand that resources are stretched. But if the government will commit to an allergy lead along with funding, it would allow someone to take ownership of the matter and drive forward a strategy to improve the lives of those with allergies. If I may, I would like to give a brief, at least recent history and timeline of the lack of progress that's been made in appointing an allergy czar. Back in January 2020, inquest was held into the death of another young person who tragically died as a consequence of an allergy, and that was Shante Torre-Thomas. Emma Torre, Shante's mother, said, following that inquest, "Nothing will ever bring our beautiful Shante back to us. What has kept me going throughout this process is knowing that she would want me to get answers and make sure the same thing doesn't happen to anyone else." The coroner highlighted the fact that no one person in the NHS England or the Department of Health is responsible for allergies, and it's quite clear we need an allergy czar to coordinate and implement steps to prevent others from suffering avoidable deaths like Shante's. And following that inquest, the Prevention of Future Deaths report, and it's interesting that we still have, it's another issue, not an issue for perhaps today, we still have no compendium. We don't have access to Prevention of Future Deaths report. We rely on them. They're very important as individual reports. But again, I'm sure if we had a better organisation of the way that coroners report, this would become a much more an issue which had much greater public attention. But in this case, in Shante's case, the coroner said, in his report, there is no person with named accountability for allergy services and allergy provision at NHS England or the Department of Health as a whole. The response from the then Minister of Care was, although there is no single named individual with oversight of all aspects of allergy policy, individuals and teams work closely together in the department on all aspects of policy relating to allergies. And it's the inadequacy of that response that led to these petitions being launched and the call by tens of thousands of people for the government to appoint an allergy czar to act as a champion for people with allergies to ensure they receive appropriate support and join up healthcare to prevent avoidable death and ill health. Now, following those events in June 2022, Natasha's foundation met with a new health minister who showed an interest and reassured the meetings that meetings were ongoing with National Allergy Strategy Group and indeed the member for Dagenham and Raynham. 3 months later, due to a carousel of prime ministers, the health minister was demoted to a different department within government, thus losing any momentum that had been built. And this is notwithstanding the fact that my honourable friend, the member for Nottingham North, who then was the Shadow Health Minister, had tabled an amendment to the Health and Social Care Bill to create an allergy czar, and although the government voted that down, or refused to accept that, the then Health Minister promised to raise the issue with NHS England. So there's a constant expectation that something is going to be done, and then that is dashed, either because of inaction by a particular minister or because that minister has simply moved on. As I say, progress has stalled time and time again because of the musical chairs, the many prime ministers and the sacking, promotion and demotion of government ministers. And the allergy community has been waiting patiently for the matter of allergies to be taken seriously once more. And this reminds me of the long battle we fought to have inquiries into Hillsborough, inquiries into contaminated blood, where you're constantly promised something by a minister or told at least that they will look into it, and then the minister moves on and suddenly we go back to square one again. So I hope that the time will now, today, in this debate, will be one where the minister can give us positive news, not just warm words, but some tangible steps they will be taking to implement a lead person for allergies as soon as is practicable. I haven't heard anyone today, and I haven't heard anybody coherently argue against the merits for having an allergies czar, which is why I posed the question to honourable friend for Dagenham and Raynham. That is a person who is dedicated and focused on the development of research towards cures for allergies, someone who's tasked with ensuring specialist allergy clinics and services up and down the UK, a dedicated lead on working with government to implement mandatory reporting on all anaphylaxis events presenting to hospital to support comprehensive investigation of fatal and near-fatal anaphylaxis events, and a champion and advocate for those who live with allergic conditions who need more specialist practitioners in their corner. There's a lot more I could say, Sir Graham, but I want to just concentrate on two questions which I really would like the answer to the Minister from. The first is, in relation to the appointment of an allergy czar, can I just remind him what his colleague said in responding to the debate on Thursday? It was this: there have been calls over recent years, I've heard them echoed today, for stronger leadership on allergy. I'm pleased to take this opportunity to outline the allergy leadership that we already have in place. In October 2022, Dr. Claire Bethune was appointed National Specialty Advisor for Specialised Immunology and Allergy. Dr. Bethune chairs the NHS Clinical Reference Group that provides clinical advice and leadership on the specialised immunology services and advising on how specialised services can be best delivered. Graham, that's not good enough. That's somebody who has a partial role, part-time role, who may well do a good job in their own field, but it is not an allergy czar, it is not a single person who is taking overriding responsibility for that. And let me just give, briefly, a few reasons why an allergy czar is essential. The debate and concern on the lack of a national lead has been going on for 20 years. During that time, clinical outcomes have barely improved. The numbers of hospitalisation has tripled. An advisor who specialises in immunology and simply chairs the existing clinical reference group does not meet the requirements for a national allergy lead. Allergy is currently managed by too many different professional groups. The immunologists do not see this as a priority and are more pathology or laboratory rather than clinically focused. That means that different specialities manage allergy disorders differently. There is not a strong appreciation that allergy leads to severe symptoms that lead to death on some occasions, through, for example, anaphylaxis or asthma. It is too often trivialised and passed down to primary care, who are inadequately trained and overcommitted on other areas. Allergy is equated with mild disease, but even hay fever has a much greater impact on those affected than is appreciated. It would be far better to have a national lead who could also be a clinical lead, who is an expert in managing allergic disease. Training in clinical allergy is minimal, whether specialist clinicians or in primary care, and we need special efforts to build that speciality. Finally, deaths from anaphylaxis are appreciably lower in those countries with a joined-up clinical allergy service, and in such countries, population knowledge about allergy is more highly developed. The case, Sir Graham, is overwhelming for why we should have an allergy czar, and I would just like a clearer answer. I don't want a restatement of what the current position is, because the current position is clearly inadequate. And the second question for the Minister is whether he or one of his colleagues, ideally the Secretary of State, would meet with the Natasha Foundation and other interested and expert parties. And I ask that for three reasons. The first is they have a personal experience which they, with great pain to themselves, have shared and have publicly shared, and they have a great deal to offer, I think, to the government and to the NHS in explaining those needs. The second reason is that they have an expertise, and I've already indicated that the work that's been done by the Natasha Foundation since Natasha's death really puts the government to shame. It's not just the passage of Natasha's law. They launched a £2.5 million Natasha clinical trial across 6 British university hospital sites, seeking to prove that everyday food products could be used in NHS settings as a cheap alternative to expensive pharmaceuticals to provide oral immunotherapy treatment for children and young people. They also funded bursaries over 4 years for students and healthcare professionals at the University of Southampton on the internationally recognised allergy master's degree and PhD courses at this world-leading allergy research centre. And they organised a global allergy symposium in September last year, hosted by the then Prince of Wales, now King Charles, at Dumfries House in Scotland, home of the Prince's Foundation, to discuss allergy and the environment, attended by 16 of the world's leading allergy scientists. That's one family, one foundation, and I ask what the government has done during that time that compares with that. And the third reason is, I think the government, third reason why a meeting is necessary, is that we've waited too long. I've talked about the musical chairs of ministers coming and going. It is long overdue for a minister to sit down seriously and talk to the Natasha Foundation and other interested parties and confront this issue. I'd love to hear the minister say today that the government is now going forward with an allergy czar. If he's not going to say that, I would ask him to say that he will sit down and seriously listen in detail, far better than the people in this room can do so, to the reasons why that needs to be done. There are lives lost here, and there are lives at stake. And as I said, as I began my remarks with, that the Minister's response today can make a huge difference to how we go forward on this issue.
Thank you very much, Sir Graham. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairpersonship, and I want to thank the member for Don Valley and the Petitions Committee for bringing this vital debate forward. I'd also like to pay tribute in this moment to Owen's families and Natasha's and all the people who have come to this debate today. Thank you for coming here, because I know how painful it must be for all of you. And I'd also like to thank the many thousands who signed the petition. Last month, Owen should have turned 24. This should have been a time of joy and celebration for him and his family. Instead, due to a tragic and preventable failing, he died less than 300 metres from this building. Diagnosed with severe food allergies at just 6 months, Owen was always careful with managing his allergies to avoid triggering a reaction. On the day that Owen passed, he took the time to inform the waiting staff of his allergies, but due to a miscommunication, the information was not passed to the kitchen. This led to his consumption of a chicken burger that had been marinated in buttermilk. Despite the presence of one of the most common allergens, dairy, this information that was only contained in the small print on the back of the menu, not alongside the products. This is in line with Regulation 5 of the Food Information Regulations 2014, which requires restaurants to collate allergen information already, but allows for this information to be delivered by any means. The current regulations are not going far enough in informing customers what allergens might be a part of their meal. Instead, the onus is unfairly placed on those with allergies to inform their servers. This cannot be right. Since Owen's death, untimely death, his family have campaigned tirelessly for common sense changes to be made by altering the legislation so that it reads on the face of a menu, instead of by any other means. This would be much like the vegan and VE vegetarian symbols displayed alongside vegetarian and vegan products in restaurants. And I praise the restaurants that acted unilaterally to display allergen information prominently on their menus. This is a straightforward step that could save lives. The number of those with allergies in the UK has steadily risen, and an estimated 1 in 3 people are affected. Owen's Law would benefit the millions of people in the UK who are allergic to a food product or who care for someone who is. Those who suffer with even a mild allergy know the detrimental impact it can take on their quality of life, the stress caused by social interactions in unfamiliar places, the diligence it takes to analyse everything you purchase and consume, the constant worry that your allergy might progress and get worse with little or no warning. It is no wonder that those who are diagnosed with an allergy are also more likely to also be diagnosed with depression or anxiety. At the inquest into Owen's death, the coroner found that a lack of data collection regarding anaphylactic reactions was contributing towards a failure to learn from these tragedies. I am pleased that some progress has been made on this front with the establishment of the UK Anaphylaxis Registry in 2021, but we need to do more to support people with these allergies. The last 20 years have seen minimal investment into NHS allergy services, and I support calls for an allergy czar to advocate on behalf of those with allergies, alongside an increased number of allergen clinics. We cannot eliminate allergens entirely, but one thing we can do is advocate for Owen's Law, which would build on Natasha's Law and ensure that allergen information is displayed along food products in restaurants, providing the proper information in the most accessible manner possible. I do beg the Minister today to ensure that action is taken. No one has disagreed in this room today. Everyone has been in favour for more resources to be deployed in this area, for there to be a czar who runs a strategy, a proper strategy with the proper financial resources, the proper research behind why so many people are allergic to various products, but also the legislation. You know, let's change the legislation. The Minister, you are there. You have got this opportunity to actually stop many more parents having to think the unthinkable about losing a child or a family member when these deaths can absolutely have been avoided if we have the right services and the right legislation in place. Thank you.
Sir Graham, and it's an absolute pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. And I'd like to start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Don Valley, who opened the debate on behalf of the Petitions Committee. And it's an extremely important debate, very poignant for many people here today and for people right across the United Kingdom who have been affected by allergies and also by inadequate labelling. and inadequate service provision, as is currently led, as we've heard, to the tragic deaths that have been relayed today. And I thank very much the families and everybody for the work that they have done, and also that they will continue to do in this space until the allergy czar is appointed, as has been agreed by most people, in fact everybody that has spoken so far today. I think the Honourable Member set the scene perfectly. He has asked for the allergy czar to be appointed to address the important issues raised. He's also highlighted why it is just so vital that menus should be explicit. And it was also raised in another point that, yes, people can have a discussion about their health-related issues at the dinner table, but perhaps that's something that not everybody feels comfortable doing, and that's exactly why it's so important, I think, that the menus themselves are explicit and that that issue is taken forward with prominence. He also spoke about the numbers of people affected and also why it's so very important that we have accurate data, including not just those who have been impacted, but those near-miss cases as well, because only with that accurate data can we understand the scale of the issue and the prevention that is needed. And he highlighted very sensibly also some of the difficulties for the trade that there may be in terms of implementing changes needed. But my goodness, when young people's lives are at stake, how very vital that those changes are made and that we work together with industry to ensure that they happen. I'd also like to thank the Honourable Member for Dagenham and Rainham, who highlighted that this is a corporate responsibility across government and that we have been waiting 20 years, which is far too long and far too many lives lost in the interim in terms of making sure that the strategy comes together and the czar is appointed and that government implements the policies that are so desperately needed. The Right Honourable Member for Winchester said that Owen's Law has already progressed in the Republic of Ireland, and I thought that was very important because it shows that despite the difficulties that were outlined at the start, that this can be done, progress can be made, and this is something, therefore, that pragmatically has to be implemented. And the Honourable Member for Cheshire and Amersham described her constituents' near-miss case very eloquently and said that that's just why it is so important that we require a standardised approach. As always, the Honourable Member for South East Cornwall spoke eloquently on behalf of her constituents, as she continually does in this House, and raised the case of Owen and the support that she's given to the family in making sure that constituents' concerns are heard at the highest level. She called it an absolute priority and asked government for changes to be made in law. There were some very good interventions, I thought, as well, for the Honourable Member from Rutherglen and Hamilton, who's no longer in her place, particularly that the Food Standards Agency has been too slow to react. And the Honourable Member for Hammersmith spoke at length, reinforced the need for the czar to be put in place. And I thought it was just such an important point that he raised, that the clinical outcomes have not improved. So whatever has been done so far has made progress, perhaps, but is just not enough and is not making a difference clinically. And he underlined the point that the current position is therefore inadequate as it stands. The Honourable Member for Sheffield, who was the final person to speak, said, and I think that sums it up, common sense changes are needed, we must work together, and that no one has disagreed. So I'd like to reinforce what has been raised already in terms of ask to the Minister. Also, I think that there should be much more testing available for allergies. I remember myself being tested and the nurse saying to me, "Do you have any allergies, Lisa?" And I said, "Well, no." And then I was so shocked when my arm started coming up with lots of little red spots, and I was told that I had indeed quite a few allergies. So I think, you know, we need to make sure that everybody can have this diagnosis and testing as well, so that there are not accidental cases where people may not even be aware themselves. As has been said, training for staff in the hospitality sector and others is just so vital in this particular case. And the other thing that I'm very interested in is digital technological advancements that we're making. And I'd like to find out from the Minister, if he hasn't got the information today, if you write to me, that would be perfect, about the blockchain digital technology that I've heard that can be applied to food labelling and distribution, which is a technological advancement that perhaps might help us to move forward in this case. So finally, just to call on the Minister to echo everybody's words, please appoint the Tsar, the allergy Tsar, because we will be saving very many people's lives.
Thank you very much, Sir Graham, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'm grateful to be responding on behalf of the Shadow Health and Social Care team this afternoon. I want to thank the Honourable Gentleman, the member for Don Valley, for his opening contribution and the compelling way that he put the case to the House today. I'd also like to thank my honourable friends, the members for Dagenham and Rainham, for Hammersmith, and for Sheffield Brightside and Hillsborough for their contributions today, and indeed to the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Winchester, the Honourable Lady, the member for South East Cornwall, the Honourable Lady, the member for Chesham and Amersham, and indeed the member for East Kilbride, speaking from the SNP benches too. Sir Graham, I want to begin by recognising the courage of Tanya and Emma, who are observing us from the gallery. I know it's not etiquette to refer to the gallery, but as we've heard, Tanya's 15-year-old daughter Natasha died of anaphylaxis after unknowingly consuming sesame in 2016, and Emma's daughter Shantae died after a severe allergic reaction to hazelnut in September 2018. To both of you, I say I cannot even begin to comprehend the loss that you've both suffered. We are incredibly grateful to be joined by you here today, and I'd like to pay tribute to the exceptional work that you're doing via the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation. Thanks to the efforts of yourselves and others, full ingredient and allergen labelling on pre-packaged food for sale was introduced in October 2021, something that members on all sides of the House are in agreement is a vital step in the right direction. But as has been rightly pointed out, there is still a very long way to go. The UK now is in the top 3 in the world for the highest incidence of allergies, with hospital admissions for food-induced anaphylaxis tripling over the last 20 years. And the largest increase was seen in children under 15, where there has been an average annual increase of 6.9% in admissions with a serious allergic reaction. Across all allergy sufferers, 20% live with a severe, debilitating form of their condition. And the case for action, Sir Graham, could not be clearer. We are here today to respond to 2 petitions. The first one relates to Owen's Law, named after Owen Carey. And I pay tribute to Tanya and Emma. I also want to pay tribute to Paul and Emma and Owen's family, who also join us today. Owen was an 18-year-old who we've heard already tragically died after eating a chicken burger marinated in buttermilk, which he was allergic to. Despite checking the menu and making his allergies clear to the server, Owen collapsed 45 minutes after his meal, and he was unable to be resuscitated. I know that the Food Standards Agency is considering what steps to take to increase the accuracy of allergen information on non-pre-packed food. But I would be grateful if the Minister could provide an update on the development of Owen's Law and what recent discussions he has had with the FSA on this vitally important issue. The second petition relates to a call for a specific allergy SAR, and members from across the House, but in particular my honourable friend, the member for Hammersmith, has put the case so diligently today. As the coroner highlighted following Shantae's death in 2018, there is no person with named accountability for allergy services and allergy provision at NHS England or in the Department for Health and Social Care as a whole. And that's unfathomable. This, and I quote, runs the risk that future deaths will occur unless action is taken. This warning was repeated recently by Coroner Heidi Connor following the death of Alexandra Bryce in 2021. Now, whether you want to call it a SAR, a lead, or just someone with named accountability, we have now had 2 senior coroners make a similar recommendation to government that someone should be appointed to take responsibility for allergy services here in England. I would therefore appreciate the Minister outlining what assessment his department has made or is making on introducing an allergy lead within NHS England or within the Department for Health and Social Care, particularly in light of the powerful interventions we've heard from patients, from bereaved families, from coroners, and in all the contributions today in the House. The other point I would like to press the Minister on is NHS service provision. Failings in care for allergic disease have been allowed to fester for far too long. My fear is that with the NHS under increasing stress, both in terms of waiting times, waiting lists and staff vacancies, this problem may well get worse, not better. So what steps is the Minister taking to address these acute problems for allergy sufferers? The Natasha Allergy Research Foundation highlight that with many GPs receiving no training in allergies, primary and secondary care services being disjointed and a shortage of allergy specialists across the UK, there is a postcode lottery of care that is costing lives. And this is being compounded by a lack of information, with more than half of ICBs not currently holding data relating to allergy disease and treatment. This isn't acceptable, and I hope the Minister, in his response, will agree that we need to see rapid progress in both the delivery of allergy care and the monitoring of prevalence and treatment. And finally, Sir Graham, I'd also like to raise the issue of research and what steps the government is taking to support potentially game-changing treatments for many allergy sufferers. I'm sure the Minister will agree that we want to see a world where allergy diseases are eradicated, and any update on this issue in the field of research would be greatly appreciated by members from across the chamber, because we all want to see improvements in allergy care, and we want support for those living with allergic diseases. We owe it to Tanya, to Emma, to Natasha, to Shantae, to Owen, to Alexandra, to all the families who've lost loved ones due to avoidable and treatable allergic reaction. So I sincerely hope that today's debate instigates a step change, and that together we can work towards a future where allergies are cured and where those living with allergic disease are properly supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. I should begin my response by thanking my honourable friend for Don Valley for securing this debate. He did an excellent job of setting out the issues. And I should thank all the other honourable members who are here today and have contributed. I found myself making copious notes, and there is a lot for me to take away and work on further. I should also thank the thousands of individuals who signed the petitions that triggered this debate. It shows the strength of the desire and the demand to improve the treatment for those suffering from allergies. And above all, Sir Graham, I must thank the families and friends of the victims who are here in the gallery today. I am terribly sorry to hear about your loss, which is awful to hear about. And I also pay tribute to you and thank you on behalf of the government for all the work that you've already done to improve safety and to try and make sure that others don't suffer in the way that you have suffered. Let me use this debate to set out some of the work that is underway on all the different aspects of this question in both the Department for Health and Social Care and also the Food Standards Agency. As has been mentioned so far, food businesses are all under the same legal obligation to provide information at the point of sale indicating the presence of 14 major allergens. And the Petitions law, which has already been mentioned, which the government introduced in 2021, requires all pre-packed direct sale food, like grab-and-go sandwiches, to have a label which shows the ingredients and allergens. This is so important for people with allergies so they can feel confident choosing food which is safe. There are about 2.6 million people with food hypersensitivities in the UK and rising, as a number of honourable members have pointed out. This includes people with food allergies, intolerances and conditions like celiac disease, which my mother suffers from, so I have some sense of the challenges facing people in that condition. The Food Standards Agency is working to address the needs of these consumers so that they can all make safe and informed choices about the food that they buy. But of course, for people with potentially life-threatening reactions to certain food, that trust becomes much more important. The Carey family is already driving awareness on these issues and the issues that people with life-threatening allergies face. The FSA has met with the family several times over the last few years and absolutely recognises the very positive impact that just the campaign for Owen's Law is already having. We need to consider all the changes that we might make to the law carefully to make sure that there are better safety outcomes for allergen sufferers and to avoid any kind of unintended consequences for consumers. There is, as already been mentioned by honourable members, a workshop taking place at the start of June with the families and others to look at how we go further. The FSA team, to answer a question put by the chair of the Select Committee, have indeed been over to Ireland to look at their law and to study how that is working. I'm not in a position to make an announcement today, but everyone, I am struck, everyone involved agrees that there is room to do better, and nothing is off the table at this point in time. We are thinking about a number of different issues as we think about how to improve labelling for people who have serious allergies. One of the challenges, and these are not arguments against doing anything, they're just issues that we have to grapple with as we work out how to make progress. And one of the issues is how do we avoid out-of-date information, potentially dangerous out-of-date information, being on menus, particularly for smaller businesses, smaller restaurants, which have more frequent changes to their ingredients. We can't have false reassurance. I remember when I worked in a Chinese restaurant, I was often sent out on the day to go to a supermarket to find ingredients, and it would often change what was in what we were serving up. So we absolutely, for those smaller businesses, can't have out-of-date information on menus. I'll happily give way to my honourable friend.
Thank you very much, Minister. Can you really explain to me then how some small outlets in my constituency actually list the allergens on their menus when you're saying that this is an obstacle?
Just to reiterate what I said at the start of my remarks, I'm mentioning some of the issues that we have to solve, not presenting them as insuperable obstacles to doing what a lot of people are calling for. Another challenge that we have to grapple with, that we are grappling with, just to lay it out for honourable members, is how we avoid some smaller businesses taking away a lot of choices for people with allergens by simply labelling too many items as containing them. If they have a small kitchen that is working with lots of different products where multiple allergens are being used, we can't take away lots of choices for people with allergens. We want them to have that freedom of choice that everyone expects to enjoy, but safety at the same time. I'm absolutely happy to give way on that point.
Making some very good points, but just on the last one, surely it is more sensible, even if some outlets are being more overcautious, to be overcautious rather than put people's lives at risk.
That's a perfectly reasonable point as we think about these things. Of course, safety has to come first, but I'm merely laying out some of the challenges that we are currently grappling with as we think about Owen's Law and we think about how we go further. But of course, even as we work on these issues and the different things that we have to think about as we think about how we go further in terms of the provision of information, we are of course getting on with improving training and improving the knowledge of people working in the food industry. And in fact, 380,000 people have signed up for allergy training through the FSA since September 2020 alone, which is a huge improvement in terms of the provision of information and the correct treatment of people with severe allergies. Over the last 22 years, the FSA has invested about £22 million into researching all these different issues, and it's scientific and social research which improves the understanding of the views of those who are affected and of food businesses and other key stakeholders, underpins all of our approach. Absolutely, just to underline what I've said a few moments ago, although I'm not making an announcement today, just to be clear, nothing is off the table and we continue to look at and work on these issues at pace. Let me now turn on to some of the other issues that have been raised in this debate today. We've heard the calls for an allergy czar, a form of leadership to advocate on behalf of those with serious allergies and their families. Now, we already have parts of that leadership role in place, though, to be clear, that responsibility is not, to address the point made by the Honourable Member for Hammersmith, squarely on one individual's shoulders. And we will absolutely look closely at this proposal and how we get to a more joined-up approach. The Honourable Member for Hammersmith asked directly whether I would meet with expert groups and those representing families who have been affected, and the answer to that is yes, absolutely. I'm extremely keen to meet with and learn from those who have done lots of work on this subject. Now, recognising that it is not what those who are campaigning for a single joined-up czar are asking for, it's worth setting out a little bit about how the current operation within NHS England works and what it is doing at the moment. Within NHS England, there is a clinical reference group chaired by the National Specialty Advisor, Dr Claire Bethune, which provides clinical advice and leadership on specialised immunology and allergy services. And the membership includes clinicians, commissioners, public health experts, and patient and public voice members to try and capture the insights of those who are most affected by all these things. They use their combined knowledge and expertise to advise NHS England on the optimal arrangements for commissioning of specialised services. That's the bit that they do. And that includes developing national standards in the form of service specifications and policies. And these are tremendously important, as honourable members know, within the NHS in terms of defining what services must be available. The CRG is in the process of commencing a review of the current service specification on specialised allergy services. And the output of that review will be an updated specification which references up-to-date guidance and takes account the very latest evidence to clearly define the standards of care for commissioned specialised services, including transition into adult services as well. And that CRG, that reference group, is just one tool we have at our disposal to address the multifaceted challenges faced by those with allergies. Officials across government are working with the National Allergy Strategy Group to consider how we work more effectively together through the likes of an expert advisory group for allergy. The arguments I've heard today will have struck a chord with many people listening across the country, and I'm certain that it's right that we continue the conversation about how we work in a more joined-up way in the future. In terms of ensuring that we have the right mix of staff working to support people with allergies, in recent years there's been a 100% fill rate for doctors going into the two training pathways that are most relevant, allergy and immunology. And NHS England will continue to identify priorities for investment in this space, in line with the expressed service priorities of the NHS across all medical specialities and the wider workforce. And that work will be complemented by the forthcoming long-term workforce plan. Through that, we've commissioned NHS England to develop a long-term plan for the NHS workforce for the next 15 years, and we've committed to publishing that plan shortly. It will include projections for the number of doctors, nurses and other professionals that will be needed in 5, 10 and 15 years' time, taking full account of improvements in productivity and the need for particular specialisms and skilled people to deal with things like immunology and allergy. Most people with an allergy can be cared for within primary care settings, with services planned and commissioned by their local ICB, but specialised allergy services are also provided for patients with the most severe allergic conditions, or those who have common allergic conditions for which conventional management has failed, or those for whom specialised treatments are required. In the current financial year, 23-24, These services are jointly commissioned by NHS England specialised commissioning integrated care boards together in line with the published service specification. And all patients have access to these specialised services. Specialised services are required to be compliant with the service specification, including the need to have physicians, dietitians and nurses who are specially trained in allergy or have had long specialist expertise in the practice of allergy management and have up-to-date continuing professional experience. All of this work is serving to improve the lives of millions of people who've been impacted to either a greater or lesser degree by allergy. Clearly, there is much more that remains to be done, and working together between government and those who have personal experience and great expertise is going to be central to driving forward continuing improvements to build on the work that's already been done and the changes that have already been made. We want to work closely together with those who are most affected in future to improve the care and service provision for those who've got serious allergies so that they can live full, meaningful and safe lives.
Nick Fletcher has lined up the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Well, I hope the petitioners believe that they've had a good debate today. We've heard an awful lot from an awful lot of people who understand this subject and all want to help bring this all together and make sure that incidents and tragedies that have happened to the petitioners don't happen again. It does seem to me that there is an awful lot of work that's going off, but like in many cases it's silo working, and a ZAR would be able to bring all that together and we could really make some pace with this to stop tragedies like this happen again. I think one of the easiest things that restaurants could do is just say that all their menus may contain something, and although that would cover them off in some things, that would take away choice for an awful lot of people. So we do really need to get ahead of this, and we need to look at it and see what we can do so that we've got as much choice for everybody, that everybody can dine and eat safely. And I believe that Azar is probably the best way forward to start on with that. I appreciate the Minister's comment saying that he actually acknowledges that there is an issue there, and also that he's made copious amounts of notes so he can take that away and he can work through that with his department too. I do refer back to the personal responsibility part that I said on this. Obviously, there's still work to be done, and so to make sure that these tragedies don't happen, if we could all work together to try and help individuals who we know suffer, work with them, support them, help them, make sure that those questions get asked if somebody does forget to say something. And this is not something that should be ridiculed. This is something that's massively important to people, and we have a duty to look after everybody in society while we obviously get this in a place where it should be. I just want to finish once again by thanking the petitioners for all their work, thanking honourable members for coming along and contributing today. I really do appreciate it, and I'm sure it's appreciated by the petitioners. Thank the Minister for his comments, and thank Sir Graham for your chairmanship today.
The question is, this House has considered E-petitions 585304 and 589716 relating to food labelling and support for people with allergies. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.
Perfect timing, thank you.
The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended.